Welcome back to another episode of the Max Stern Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch. And today we kind of catch up on a lot of the contract extensions that were done right at the start of the regular season, right before the regular season. We kind of had to wrap up our season preview because it wouldn't make sense to be posting Metropolitan Division preview 2 weeks into the season. So we kind of had to do all that before we could get back to the contracts. And so end of September into October, we had pretty consistent trickle of contract extension signs. So we're going to kind of go through that, maybe update the landscape of what's still out, some of the bigger names that are still out there and where that could go. So we appreciate you listening. Max Stern Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Our content is available on X at AFP Analytics, Blue Sky Threads, same thing. These contract projections we're going to reference, pin post on all of them, still there. It's different tab than what might be kind of come up as default, but they're right in there. And these are still from the start of the off season, so our next kind of update will not be until January, but there probably has been some movement based on some of the contracts we're about to talk about, and we'll maybe try to highlight that in this episode as well. On our link tree, which you can find through all the profiles, you'll find a buy me a coffee link. If you appreciate our work and would like to contribute to our work financially, we do appreciate it. Be pulling that out soon and doing a donation to Rochester Emergency Veterinary Service, and then we'll pick something else as after we do that. Maybe it'll be the same, maybe it'll be someplace different, but we do appreciate any contributions you have made or consider making in the future. Think we get into it. Contracts, extensions. So we're going back to Anthony Stolarz is where we're going to start. End of September. We're going to kind of talk about him and Filip Gustavsson, both goalies that had 1 year left on their contract pending unrestricted free agents at the end of this year. I think the blanket statement that I'll just start with, and then you can kind of tell me more thoughts here, but I think the blanket statement is both contracts seem surprisingly undervalued for those two players.
Yeah, I think so. Gustafsson's deal in comparison to our projection wasn't too bad. It was about right. Stolarz, I think, left some money on the table, but maybe was looking for the term because he did get a lot more term. I think double what we had projected. But going back to Gustafsson and to your point, I think so. Obviously, we released all of these projections in May. The big thing that happened that made me expect a bit of a boom in the goalie market was the Demko contract. So his extension was right away, I believe, July 1st, $8.5 million, 3 years. And that's a player who, when he is healthy, he's a top 5 goalie, but he's had some health issues. So that's a significant number to commit. Expecting that to raise the market a little bit. So Gustafsson, we projected 6 at 7.25. He signed for 5 by 6.8. So amount of years bought, like 1 less than projected. It's slightly lower AAV. Usually I would say, okay, that's fine. Not a big deal. But again, where Demko seemed at least to have set the very good starter market, I would have expected, if anything, our projection would have been a little bit low, not a little bit high.
Kind of not quite the same situation, not 100% comparable, but Dustin Wolf also had signed an extension that's buying mostly UFA years, and that came in at 7.5 million average annual value for 7 years. Again, not perfect comparison because there's a few RFA years at the end, restricted years, that generally should be lower salary. Gustafsson's deal buys all unrestricted free agent years, which generally come at a little bit of a premium, but the fact that he ended up actually with a lower average annual value than Wolf's contract, which bought some what should be cheaper years is also a little bit surprising to me in my
Yeah.
mind. And then Spencer Knight as well, similar to Dustin Wolf, he only bought a couple unrestricted free agent years, so maybe a little less relevant, but his was 6.3, so Gustafsson exceeding that made sense, but kind of him slotting between Wolf and Knight as two RFAs who should be in theory getting lesser value. Kind of it combined with, as you highlighted, Demko, like I it felt light. And then when I looked at our projection, I realized, as you laid out, how close we were, and kind of was like, oh, okay.
It's difficult. So I want to say 3 seasons ago, Gustafsson had a very good year. Then a little bit of a step back 2 seasons ago. And then last year, he was very good again. And for his age, so this will kick in his, we'll call it contract year 28, age 28. That's a pretty good time for a goalie to hit the market. Still some what would be your true, like, we'll call them peak years or close to peak years. So that, and pair it with just there doesn't really seem to be goalies, starting caliber goalies hitting the UFA market. It feels like going a little bit light on the deal there is something that would be fairly avoidable. And I bring that up specifically because, so transitioning to Stolars, I guess, our projection 2 years at about 4.25. This is another one to keep hammering home the point we were making. Once Demko signed, I did not expect Stolars to jump crazy, but it made me feel okay. Stolars, maybe we're really looking at a number in the fives for the AAV. He actually signs about 500,000 less than our projection, so 3.75 million AAV, but gets 2 more years. So he signed a 4-year deal. So it kind of looks light, especially looking at that AAV. I think both kind of his recent injury history and the fact that this deal kicks in his age 32 season, I can, just looking at the contract, I'm confident the players' side probably said, okay, we want some term here to be locked up. So they get double the term. And even though it was 500K lower, you look at a total value is almost double than what we had projected. And again, for someone starting this next contract at age 32, that could actually pay off for him.
Yeah, the fact that he's never had a really any sort of term commitment from any team that he's played with.
Yeah.
You can't fault the player for taking some long-term security for the first time in his professional career. So I don't fault that by any means. Jake Allen kind of also had set the market a little bit interestingly for probably a similar caliber goalie. He went real long with the very low average annual value, so
His was much more like
his
extreme, but
yes.
same idea. Yeah. Especially kind of same point in their careers too.
Yep, looking for a kind of a long-term fit over maybe not maximizing every single dollar they could get. Want to kind of also bring one more kind of comparable goalie in this conversation, and that was Lucas Dolstall. This summer got 4 years, or we had projected 4 years, 5.2. He ended up at 6.5 million. Again, he's 25 years old, so he's probably a little bit more relevant for the Gustafsson conversation, but also not irrelevant for Stolars, in my opinion, because of the fact that neither have a ton of starting time on their resume as like the clear first of 1A type goalie. So again, not perfect comparison there, but think he's at least a little bit relevant to this conversation. Basically, saw Demko and Dolstall early in the summer push the market up, and then we see Wolf, Knight, Gustafson, Stolars maybe pull it back down a little bit.
Yep.
Especially in the like clarified, the cap's definitely going up big next year. Just kind of interesting that's kind of what happened with the goalie market.
Transitioning away from the goalies, I'd say the first big contract we really want to talk about is probably Kaprizov. And I had kind of realized as I was saying that there's almost not a ton to really talk about with it. It's just a extremely large contract. So we had projected a little over 14 million, about 14.1, 14.2 on a max term deal. And he's still got a max term deal, but it was 17 million. So clear market reset. And we kind of knew for a while that was coming. There was the rumored, I believe it was a rumored 16 mil offer that he declined. And then they ended up obviously adding 1 million to each year. I think this is an interesting one because in the moment when he signed that, while it was a crazy number, I don't think it was necessarily viewed industry wide as that's insane, that's not good, because there was an expectation that McDavid would end up signing, and that would be a large number, and that both of those guys together would be pulling the market up. In hindsight, that's not quite what happened. So this is almost, obviously, it's not a great comparison in many ways, but this is almost like the Demko contract coming in. Demko coming in at 8.5 ended up being a lot higher than most goalies that signed. Kaprizov at 17 million ended up being a lot higher than the other top elite stars that have recently signed. So I don't know truly what to think of that. There's a ton of cap space coming in the next few years and probably beyond that. It was one I struggled to have like a true opinion on. I think most likely this is still going to be perfectly fine because some star players should be signing at that level in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think the initial thought when it was signed is buckle in, here we go.
Yeah.
And then instead of putting the gas, and then instead of having all the other players continue to push the gas pedal to the floor, they almost hit the brakes. So my gut reaction was it's fine, but Minnesota's getting very close with this $17 million deal, is getting very close to the, okay, this might actually be a little bit too much, too aggressive. But I still think they're on the right side of things, but they certainly got very close to towing that line, which I didn't necessarily expect for Kaprizov. I thought maybe McDavid, maybe Eichel would get there, but not Kaprizov, and that's not to say that he's not deserving of it, but...
And the other thing I'll say, it almost, and this is again, it's a hindsight thing, what happened with McDavid almost made the Kaprizov signing look, I'll say worse. I don't want to call it bad, but I'm going to say worse because we expected McDavid would come in at least like 16 plus. But what he actually did, he took a 2-year deal. So he's buying not nearly as many years. So you would expect it to come in a bit lower. But I think just seeing the AAV numbers kind of next to each other, McDavid signing for 12.5 makes that Kaprizov deal seem not smart. But I think it's going to be okay. Like the cap's going up enough that they should be fine.
I think if you're kind of trying to assess these, I think you have to throw the McDavid contract out in any sort of like, okay, where is the market going? That was McDavid doing the team a favor and basically giving them, well, also giving them an ultimatum, basically saying, you got 3 more years, this year and 2 more. And if we don't I'm giving you every opportunity to work with the cap, to re-sign guys, to make moves, and if we don't get there, I'm gone. And I think that's basically what that contract's saying is if they can't win in the next 3 years with a bargain on their salary cap,
Yeah.
he's walking. The two contracts that I think we have to look at in comparison to Kaprizov are Eichel and Connor. So when Kaprizov signed, it's like, as you mentioned, our projection was what, almost $3 million below
Yeah, almost.
what he had signed. So it's like, okay, well, buckle up for McDavid or for Eichel Connor to come in
15.
Yeah,
like
however much, at least another million or two above our
14s. Yeah.
projection. And we ultimately have Connor basically signing exactly for our projection.
Yeah, so I guess exact numbers there. Kyle Connor projected 8 by, I'm going to say 12 million. It was like 11.998. So 12 million. Our air for the cap hit was $1,600.
Yeah.
Like we nailed that contract. So nothing really changed for him in our eyes, at least based off our projection. And Eichel, we had 8 years, 13.95, so we'll call it 14 million. And he signs 8 years, 13 and a half. I know some people don't like to hear it. That's Vegas. Like, it makes sense.
Somewhat, but I one of the things I had pointed out is when you look at, we include kind of how tax would influence our projection, and the number that we thought would be a fair number in Vegas for Eichel was actually like below what he signed. So Eichel kind of
about 13, 12.9, 13.
Yeah. So
I mean, I should be fair. We could just be off a little bit.
yes,
It could be a mixture of we're off a little bit. Vegas is very good. He wants to stay. They just signed Marner. Gets to take home more of that money than he would in other places. So yeah, but I mean, overall in general, like the market didn't move much for Jack Eichel.
no. I mean, based off what Kaprizov did, we would have expected to be low.
Right.
On Eichel.
Very low.
And we were a touch high, but I would say for both Eichel and Connor, with the dollar value we're projecting and the very unknown environment, we did very well. Like, they came in very close to what we were thinking they would, which again, Kaprizov's contract had us both thinking that's not going to happen.
I'm going to say let's take a break from UFA extensions.
Yep.
And jump to an RFA defenseman, Jackson Lacombe, which I will say when this one happened, I found it kind of funny. There were a decent amount of people who kind of made jokes like, did you even know who Jackson Lacombe was? And really it's because one, he's young, and two, he plays for the Anaheim Ducks.
I would say, and three, he was a late bloomer. He really came on the scene in the last half of second, not to diminish what he had done previously, but his arrival was last year, and particularly kind of the second half of last year.
I'd also say, I guess, add a fourth reason. It's not like he was coming up as this third overall pick. So, like, there's, I guess, a lot of factors there that kind of played into him being a bit of a overlooked, undervalued across kind of the league landscape, at least amongst fans. But like you said, he really had a phenomenal season last year and had his breakout year. So this was an interesting one to project. One, I think you did Lacombe. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember
no,
for
you
sure.
did most of that.
Did I do Lacombe?
Maybe, maybe not.
Regardless, interesting one to project. I guess I'll try and speak to it like I did it. I don't remember if it was me or not. Having kind of that half year where it was obvious, okay, this guy's a top pair defenseman. It's not a full year. It's not 2 years. So the comps that came in are pretty good defensemen, but not necessarily the elite level. So to name a few, Cam Fowler, Torrey Krug, Dmitry Orlov, Sean Dursey was one that we threw on there, the deal he signed with Utah recently. And we ultimately settled on 5 years at about $7.5 million, which is kind of that, like, okay, this guy's good, but he's not a top guy for us yet. But Anaheim decided to pay him as if that half year last year was what they're going to get for the next decade. 8 years, $9 million. I will say, I guess maybe this leads you into something, maybe it doesn't. Buying those extra years, which are all UFA years, is going to shoot the AAV through the roof. So even though the actual contract came in about $1.5 million higher in AAV each season, value wise of like what you should expect for a player, this deal that he ended up getting, it makes sense.
Yeah, that was basically where I was going to go. And then also in kind of the context of this, day before Luke Hughes had re-signed, had signed his contract with the Devils, and it's the exact, or his was 7 years, $9 million.
Yep.
So there's a younger player, so Luke Hughes is buying more RFA years, but it's kind of setting a market for like, okay, if we're going to project a young player that we think will be on our top pair for years to come, well, there's the market, and makes sense that Lacombe did come in very similar, because I guess speaking with actual production, Lacombe's production's actually been better than Luke Hughes's, but he doesn't have, as you highlighted, he doesn't have the same pedigree necessarily coming into the league. And that matters here a little bit, because the Devils are trying to get ahead and buy into the talent and the projection.
Yep.
Ducks a little bit the same thing, but they've, as you said, at least have seen it. But I think the point of saying that, okay, yeah, we had projected 7.5, him getting 3 more years certainly makes sense at that average annual value with our relative to kind of what we had projected.
Moving on from Lacombe and sort of Hughes, because that I think is very relevant here still. Last RFA we'll talk about as far as extensions are concerned. Lane Hutson. So this one, obviously, it came after Lacombe and Hughes. So we kind of see those two both come in at $9 million, and we're thinking, oh boy, okay, Lane Hutson should get absolutely paid. Our projection was 7 years at about 10.25. He ended up 8 years, 8.85. So not only, I will say, significantly lower than projected, that's 1.4 million difference, but after two players who we kind of expected to maybe be a notch below Hutson in value, actually end up being above slightly, ever so slightly. I think I'm not saying anything crazy by saying he definitely took a deal here. From all the different reports that were kind of happening, it seemed like there was definitely a want on the player side to just get this over with and out of the way, which probably impacted this value a little bit. Not only are you kind of giving in there just based off of that, but Hutson, in comparison to Luke Hughes, was a 10.2C RFA, meaning, or he would have been, meaning ineligible for an offer sheet. So as far as talking to other teams, can't do it. Zero leverage. So that plays in here. I still find it a little odd that, like, seeing those other two at 9, that he didn't hop in at, let's say, like 9.5 at least. So I don't know. I think Montreal did a very good job keeping this lower. It seems like they kind of want to set a cap culture, something we heard a lot about with like the good Bruins teams in the past decade. Good for them.
So I think that Hughes was the comp, and I fully agree that he probably should not have received necessarily a contract below that. I had reporter from Montreal outlet reach out to me, and we were kind of working on figuring out what a structure could kind of look like for Lane Hutson for to kind of maximize net value and everything. And I don't know if he ended up getting his article out in time before the Hudson news. It took me a couple days, and we were going back and forth on some things. I read the draft, and I don't know if I ever saw it posted, which I feel bad, which is why I'm not necessarily saying who, because I don't want to be incorrect or correct here, but we were kind of going back and forth. I think he had a table that he had tagged me in, and that was about the extent that he was able to get through before it had hit the airwaves and everything. But anyways, so we were talking a lot about kind of how Lane Hutson could potentially structure this, because it had come out that his camp didn't love using retirement compensation agreement with RCA, commonly referred to up in Canada. There was talk about like, well, the Canadians don't want to do signing bonuses, and that is kind of what led to some of the breakdown in talks for a little while. Is the Canadians are trying to push these tax mechanisms to actually make the net value look better. And then you have Hudson's camp, who probably shouldn't be necessarily falling fully back on those. He should be getting he has to consider the gross value, especially relative to Luke Hughes. Anyways, where this all kind of end up going, the structure of Hudson's contract allows him to take advantage of some tax saving strategies, treaty like Canada U.S. tax treaty, as well as the RCA contributions that should help him have a much larger actually net take home than both Luke Hughes and Jackson Lacombe. So.
Are you saying like tax stuff matters?
Maybe. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, it matters in this. I think it helps. Let me phrase it this way. It helps justify the contract that he ended up getting, because ultimately he could get pretty close to mimicking a Florida Vegas tax situation while playing in Montreal, opposed to Lacombe and Hughes being in two of the absolute worst places.
California, New Jersey.
Two of the highest tax places. Like,
yep.
There's a lot less tax planning that you can do to minimize those hits, because you're playing all those games and practicing in those states. Can't really get out of that. So yeah, so so the tax thing does matter here. The way that they went about doing it, I'm not going to go much more in the weeds. They might be being a little bit aggressive in the signing bonus approach. It'll be interesting if that raises any scrutiny with the CRA or anything. We'll be following that down the road. But anyways, I'm not going to go much more there, but it's
so
it helps.
Ultimately, a deal on the surface, and maybe just term AV as a comparison, seems low, but some call them behind the scenes factors or more in-depth factors that could impact a contract might really be helping him out a bit.
Yes, but with all that said, I can't imagine the Players Association's real happy with that deal. In general.
Yeah. It's not ideal, again, as a comparison.
And just in general, trying to push salaries forward, that's not helping.
Right.
And again, we can talk about the tax saving strategies, but we're still contracts are still negotiated in gross value. That's still how it matters on the cap. That's still how agents get paid.
Yep.
That's still the number that matters. And the Players Association, for the betterment of all the players in the league, wants to see those numbers grow and players taking these deals, even though that they have mechanisms available to them to selfishly minimize theirs and help their team and look like a hero, are not helping the greater good either.
Yep. That concludes RFAs. There's a few UFA defensemen that I think we could touch on. Nico Mikkola with the Florida Panthers. Ultimately a top 4 kind of defensive guy. Projected 5 years at about 5.5. He ended up signing 8 years at $5 million. That is just Florida. Phenomenal team, great culture, great tax situation. Pair all those together, and it ends up in another contract that is probably team friendly. It could, I think, be argued, though. Some people would actually, I saw some people tried to argue 8 years, that's not team friendly for someone like Mikkola. We'll take him till he's 37, 38. I don't know. I think in their cup window right now, it's great that they were able to lock him in under what our projected value would be.
Yeah, and I think the thing to emphasize here is $5 million in I don't know how many years is going to be what a good third pair defenseman is getting paid. So if that's the bar, I would hope that he's clearing that for most of the life of the contract. And if the very, very back end is a little bit of an issue, I think by that point, Florida's probably going to have enough other issues on their cap. Like if that window has closed and they have aging players at the tail end of their 8-year contracts, well, I think they're just going to be dealing with it anyways. So whatever.
Something interesting, I don't know whether this is good or bad, or whether anything good or bad would happen in relation to this. Something I didn't realize, he's quietly like one of the fastest defensemen. He's very quick. And I guess I would say I don't realize that because he's kind of labeled as a defensive first guy. And just as soon as that's put on a player, you kind of think, all right, they're stay at home, not going to move around too much. He plays the Florida style that defensemen jump up into the play, and he plays with the speed. I bring that up as, like, I guess, again, you could argue, does the speed last? And if it starts to go, does that impact him? But I would kind of side with the point that you just made of by the time you get into the second half of the deal, that money is not something that's going to hurt, even if he's declining.
Or if it does, Florida's probably exhausted their cup window anyways, and whatever.
Yep.
If they can win another cup or two by having him on this contract right now, don't care.
Worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yep. Speaking of trying to win cups, Edmonton Oilers signed a couple defensemen, and this is what will kind of conclude the extension conversation. First was Jake Wallman, came in pretty much right when McDavid's deal came in. So Wallman, we had projected 5 years, 6.5. Ends up 7 years, $7 million. Yeah, that's fine. I don't really have an issue with that. He's a top 4 defenseman, even if not every team believes so.
Yeah, if you weren't going to get the shot in
Detroit.
Iowa, yeah.
He's a top 4 defenseman. Makes their defense, especially when everyone's healthy, very deep. I don't have an issue with this deal.
No,
it's fair.
It makes they got clarity on their cap situation with McDavid taking that bargain. So yeah, you better start taking advantage of that and locking Wallman up, and then Matthias Ekholm.
So Ekholm was the second one there. So This was an interesting one. I'll kind of bring in, I guess it's interesting to wrap with Ekholm because I'm going to kind of use the concept I was sort of mentioning with Stolars, who we started with. Older player, maybe getting a touch more in term and a little less in AAV, it still works out and it makes sense. So projected 2 years, 6.5 million, ended up getting 3 years, 4 million.
Math whiz is out there.
Total value, he ends up taking 1 million less than what we projected, which, okay, for a 30-year-old, doesn't make a ton of sense to do that necessarily, but for someone who will be in his age 36 season when this contract starts, I don't have any issue with this.
Yeah, I mean this is probably his last contract.
Right. And if it's not, like, he's signing probably for close to minimum
to chase the cup that he hasn't won in Edmonton.
And I will say that's whether he signed a 2-year or a 3-year.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
He's probably, the next contract is close to minimum.
Yep.
At that age. So again, no issue with this. Helps the team keep the AAV low, and he still gets his money.
Yep. Yeah, so that's really good work by Edmonton there, getting both of those done. So now they have cap. They know exactly where they sit for next season too now, so they can start making, like, they can make in-season acquisitions with next year also in mind and kind of be able to fit things in. Having the clarity there, I was just going to pull up real quickly their cap situation on cap wages. So they have unrestricted free agents, but like Adam Henrique, they're probably going to look to upgrade from. They just signed Jack Roslovic for just the 1 year, 1.5 million. That's a great deal for them. Fit might be a little bit interesting, but you're still getting a very good player on a very team-friendly contract. Then they have Kapanen, Tomasek, who will whatever, Brett Kulak, and Troy Stetcher, and then their goaltending situation. So basically, they've now put themselves in a position to, if they need to, upgrade their goalie situation. Well,
to give a specific number to, they're still going to be working with like around 19 mil in space.
Yeah.
So knowing all those deals are locked in, as you said, like that's huge for them because their main focus can really be, I guess I will say goaltending will be one of their main focuses. Maybe they're looking for another top six forward. We'll see how some of their prospects do, but the clarity of getting McDavid, Wallman, Ekholm done, those were the big ticket guys. So that's huge for them.
I think it's more like 15.5 when accounting for Zach Hyman's entirety, his 5 million on the cap.
That is it. He's making 5 a year.
Yeah.
So it would be, no, it would be like 18.
Okay.
About 18, the way they have the calculation in here.
Anyways, regardless, yes.
Yes.
I'm toggling on and off. Oh, it looks like it's double counting Hyman at 3.8, toggling on long-term injured reserve versus off. Yes. So I think it would be 18, but regardless, yeah. It's kind of hard to
same point stands.
Yes.
Like they have clarity on what they can do, and they've got space to do a couple things, big things if they want.
Yes, and for the first time in a couple off seasons, they don't have to operate just short-term thinking.
Yep.
Which, again, McDavid doing that nice contract extension for them helps a ton, but I think it also is kind of that ultimatum as well. Before we wrap the episode, let's kind of just reset the landscape of players yet to sign and how some of these deals may have influenced or may influence what they end up doing. I had done a quick episode a few weeks back, right before like the McDavid extension, the Kaprizov extension. I think I spoke them into existence. So fans of those teams, you can thank me later, or you can thank me by contributing to our Buy Me a Coffee. Cheap plug there, but I think I think it's important to kind of set the landscape because, yes, a lot of the bigger unrestricted free agents are done, but there are still some big names as far as unrestricted, and there's still some very big names restricted free agents out there. We'll just kind of set the landscape a little bit and talk about if we think our projection should change based on some of the contracts that have been signed already.
I guess we'll start right at the top. A couple of RFAs who are on the same team. Jason Robertson, I guess we can talk about first. So that projection's 8 years at about 11 and a half. I'm almost not to kind of sidestep your question. That's a deal that I think could very well increase, but could also pretty much stay right where it's at. So he's an RFA, yeah, but for this would buy one RFA season. So a majority of the contract's going to be a UFA deal. So I would very much so expect, okay, we saw Connor at 12. Where does Natchez come in? Where does Kempe come in? Where does Tuch come in? That range of players will probably impact Jason Robertson here.
Yeah. Or if he has a very good season, obviously that would help as well. But
yes,
I don't know how much it changes because I don't know if he's getting above Kyle Connor.
Yeah.
And we projected Robertson, as you said, 11 and a half. Connor got 12. So I don't know how he gets above that. I'm not sure he gets above Rotten either, who came in at 12, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head.
So I guess that's the other factor there is he plays for Dallas. I would assume you are correct in bringing that up, that they'd probably like to keep him at or below, more preferably below Rotten. Or does he get traded? I don't know. But yeah, I kind of am with you. Like, I could very much see this projection kind of staying as is.
Yeah.
Thomas Harley, the second player at the top here, as I mentioned, two for the same team. A lot for Dallas to figure out. 8 years, about 10.75 was our projection. I wonder if that's actually a touch high.
It's tough. Yeah. I this one I would feel more comfortable if I had to stake my claim and pick one of the Dallas projections. I feel I have to stake my reputation, stake my money on whatever. I'd lean towards Robertson because I don't know where this Harley discussion goes. So I'm curious why you think it might be a touch high.
I think recent defenseman deals are going to impact that. And if assuming he stays with Dallas, those two factors together, I could see him taking a little less than that.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but he also how much like Lacombe's a great comp here. Similar age, well, at least
Couple
from an
years
age
younger for Harley.
perspective, yeah,
1 year younger.
pretty good, yeah, pretty good comp there. And Harley's has a lot better of a track record.
So I will say that's a good point, and then I'll also counter with another factor here could be he needs to get paid more than Heiskanen. He's going to.
Yeah.
But he may not be viewed as the team's best defenseman. So I wonder if that limits it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you could argue he is as good or better than Heiskanen, as good as Heiskanen is. Like, he's very good. I'm not diminishing
yes,
how good he is. Harley's also very, very good. There's a lot of factors I think at play that could drag him down slightly.
yeah. I
Like, if he got 10 million, he's easily clearing the recent guys that have signed.
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, but then the like how much better is he than Lacombe? If Lacombe's his floor, he should be above him. And how much more is that? And then you have Lacombe playing with the Anaheim Ducks in California, and then you have Thomas Harley playing with the Dallas Stars in Texas. The tax discussion is going to come up as well. Yeah, I mean that just could go. It really could go anywhere.
Something I'll toss out, and I don't think Dallas really needs to do this necessarily. They're gonna have a decent amount of cap space to work with, in the mid 20s. That could be eaten up a large chunk of that very quickly with both of these deals. Do they look at a Harley or maybe even a Robertson, but I'd say more Harley, and do a kind of similar? I guess Wyatt Johnson's deal was his first deal, so it's not quite similar, but they don't do the full max term and they go a little bit shorter.
Yeah,
to keep the AAV lower.
Or I could even see them trying to even just do a 1, maybe 2-year bridge deal, wait for Tyler Seguin's $9.85 million to come off after the 26-27 season.
Yeah.
And then give Harley his massive payday then. That might work out a little bit better for them.
It's not what I would do, but
no,
like that is a very logical route that it would not shock me if an NHL team went that way.
That's kind of like, yeah, I don't advise it, but if there's a situation that it's justifiable, this is maybe the most justifiable situation. I'd also say I wonder how much kicking the can down the road really is going to change where Harley's ceiling is, because right now his ceiling is Rasmus Dahlin, probably 11.5 with Buffalo.
Yeah.
Is really kicking that to another year or two down the road going to put him that much who's going to sign in that time that's going to potentially put him above that? I think the only player might be Makar. That might set a new ceiling.
I will say Quinn Hughes, because depending on the length of, let's say, a very short Harley deal, Hughes could either be up or eligible for an extension.
So Makar's up after the 26-27 season, which I believe is the same time Quinn Hughes is up. If I'm checking right. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So Harley, so it could make a lot of sense to do a 1-year deal that allows Seguin's contract to come off the books for Dallas, and it also could allow Dallas to get in before Hughes and Makar get done, or maybe similar, like
a 1-year or a 2-year.
Yeah,
could make a lot of sense because he'd stay RFA, and it allows for him to see those new values.
Yeah. And then I still would wonder how much above Rasmus Dahlin is he able to get anyways, because that's a pretty high bar to clear.
You know, the one thing with Harley, as good as he is and as good as his underlying numbers are, the point production hasn't been there to the extent of those top guys we just mentioned. So even though they could sign and pull the market up for him, he's not following those guys necessarily. He's falling in behind them.
And as you kind of started the whole thing about, you think he's as important, if not more important to Dallas than Heiskanen, but there's at least a discussion there. He's not the clear one, whereas Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo, clear one. Cal Makar in Colorado, clear one. Quinn Hughes in Vancouver is their entire team.
Yeah. Take a jab at Vancouver.
yeah. Vancouver's catching strays
for no reason.
I mean, I guess I could say Rasmus Dahlin's Buffalo's entire team too, but Tage Thompson at least scores 40 goals. So, anyways, we're not going there. No more strays.
I'll also say, okay, we talked a lot about Dallas and those top two guys. I'm still gonna kind of split them in half and go in each direction. So Harley is kind of the biggest name as far as RFA defenseman, but there is one in Detroit that we should probably watch a little bit, Simon Edvinsson. He is an obvious top 4 guy, and their hope, I think, would be top pair with Seider long term. He's kind of the next rung down the ladder as far as contract expectations. That was a 7-year at about 8.4 million
projection.
I will say I could almost see that one rising a little bit after this year. I think he could very well fall into the similar Luke Hughes, Jackson Lacombe 9 million range if he has a real solid season.
His struggle is going to always be the Seider contract.
The fact that he plays for Detroit. Yep.
Yep. And Seider's contract is what, like, is I think 8.6.
Yeah. I always forget because there was him and Faber kind of right around.
Faber got, I believe, 8.5, and then Seider got 8.6 above that.
8.55 was Seider.
Okay. So I struggle to see Edvinsson getting above Seider, which I don't think's necessarily correct because these are going to be signed under drastically different salary cap numbers. But the way that teams operate, they're going to do everything in their power to push, to basically say, Mo Seider's our number one. He's not that much older. We just did this contract negotiation with him very recently. That's your ceiling. You're not as valuable to our team as Seider was. You're not getting as much as him.
Yeah, it's possible.
And that's exactly what Detroit's going to stand on.
Yep. And I guess I'll move on from there and just throw out a few other names. We don't really even need to talk about them, but just kind of what the market looks like for RFA defensemen. Philip Broberg with St. Louis. Anaheim's going to have a couple more in Zellweger and Mintnyakov. Then you kind of get down to guys who should be like second pair probably. Braden Schneider hopefully ends up being a second pair. Drysdale for Philly, same thing. Like hopefully he kind of becomes a second pair. Jordan Spence, like we're kind of into the guys as RFAs. You're hoping are established top 4 guys.
We're in the place where if these guys are upping, I would be shocked. I
don't think it's happening right now.
No.
This is like let's watch their values, see what happens.
Yep.
Range.
Yep.
Looking at the RFA forward, so we started with Robertson, but there are still some big center names that need to sign. Bedard, Fantilli, Cooley, Carlson are kind of the main ones, and we mostly had them all kind of in the same 9 to 9.5 range. Bedard a little bit higher at about 10.1 on long-term deals. That we've been saying it all off season. Who's signing first? That's kind of going to show us where that market is. Before I keep jumping, anything you want to say about the younger centers?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think all of them and their agents are probably playing a game of chicken because Bedard maybe gets a little bit more, but all of them are going to try to kind of be the last of the crop to sign because whoever signs the last, maybe excluding Bedard, is going to get the highest contract. Bedard might still clear all of them regardless.
It'll be Seider making sure he got 50,000 more a year than Brock Faber.
Exactly.
Looking, I guess, more specifically at Robertson and the other names there. Well, really, I guess there's not really other names there with him. There's a significant drop, I think, to looking at our sheet. Zach Benson.
Yeah.
/ Connor McMichael, Dylan Holloway, Cutter Gauthier. That kind of range.
One more name, Pavel Dorofeev.
I'm zoomed in a little too much on the sheet.
Right. Yeah,
Dorofeev is a big one, having a good start as far as goal scoring. So there's a clear separation between Robertson, an RFA winger, and the next RFA wingers. But there's a lot of guys kind of in that should be clear top 6 players for the foreseeable future. That also might kind of be a who signs first.
Did you say Barrett Hayton and Shane Pinto as well in that discussion?
I didn't. I skipped over them.
I know they're not wingers.
They're not wingers. I probably should have mentioned that next tier of centers.
Yeah. So to me, Holloway and Dorofeev are kind of, those two are going to be waiting each other out. Dorofeev is going to wait out until he keeps so he can keep scoring goals anyways. But Dorofeev and Holloway are kind of the comps to each other. McMichael, depending if you look at him center or winger.
Yeah.
So those three are kind of grouped together. You have the Hayton Pinto 2C level. Pinto basically has been Ottawa's 2C to start this season. And then you have, I guess, Cole Perfetti also is in that discussion as well. And then you have the Cutter Gauthier and Zach Benson, who are coming off their entry-level contracts.
Benson with a little more of a leverage.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I was going to say to finish that sentence to make it a sentence. A little more leverage as he can talk to other teams for an offer sheet.
That's correct.
At 21 years old, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Especially playing for Buffalo.
Yeah.
Boom, shots fired. Buffalo fan.
And he also has some leverage because the team is currently 1-0 and has scored 8 goals with him in the lineup.
True. 4 assists.
And are 0-3 with 2 goals with him out of the lineup. So he has more points in the 1 game he played than the team had scored goals in the 3 games he didn't play. So
82 game pace.
So I
328 points.
Yeah, so maximum
Assists.
Yeah, I say he does it. So maximum leverage would be to get a deal done tomorrow, obviously, for him. Because he is obviously the best player in the league right now.
Yeah. No, obviously we are joking. But I will say on Zach Benson, I think it should be pointed out, we released these in May. So I would hope if you're listening to this, you've paid attention to us enough to know that Zach Benson should be in that tier. We'll see what ends up happening with him. I don't think if things go south with Buffalo that he's really a name to watch. He's probably a name that sticks around after all of the chaos. But they really shouldn't be going short term. There's going to be cap space. He should probably be able to see a number that starts with a 7. He's going to be playing top 6 minutes all year. So
they actually don't have as much cap space next year as you might think they do.
No, I know they don't, but moving forward in like the next, I mean, I'll say 3 seasons because that's what people are generally referencing, but the cap growth that's expected, even if a team only has like 10 mil to work with next year, you have a young RFA like that who is an important piece in the lineup, sign him long term. There's going to be space each year.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing. I'm gotta point out, if Alex Tuch re-signs with Buffalo, which will be a good transition to probably finish the market with those guys. Alex Tuch re-signs in Buffalo. Their cap space next offseason is actually incredibly tight, with needing new deals for Zach Benson, Josh Stone, Michael Kesselring, who all should be playing top 4 for defense, top 6 for forward minutes. And that does not include Peyton Krebs and Beck Malenstein, who I don't think they're as concerned about.
Yeah.
But if Alex Tuch eats into $10 million of their potential $20 million in cap space, fitting Benson, Doan, and Kesselring in at $10 million each is going to be incredibly difficult.
$10 million for those 3.
For those 3, yes.
Yep.
A combined $10 million for those 3 is going to be incredibly difficult, especially based off of the start that Benson and Doan have had to the season. So just want to point, it actually is not a guarantee that they can go long-term with all three of those guys. So maybe Benson or Doan are probably the ones that one to get the short-term deal.
Coming back from our tangent a little bit, if you're
Yep.
still with us and didn't turn this episode off because we started talking about the Buffalo Sabres, thank you. I'm still going to talk about a Buffalo Sabre, as you kind of said. Let's lead into this. UFA forward, mentioned Tuch. He's going to be towards the top. We had 7 by 8.5. He's likely higher than that at this point. Some other top forwards, really, they're wingers. Panarin's going to be up towards the top. Natchez is mostly a winger at this point, I think. Then you've got Adrian Kempe. We mentioned Tuch.
That's
Nick Schmaltz is kind of the beginning of the next tier.
Yeah, I
so I think those other names are kind of the top elite group.
It's to me, it's Natchez, Kempe, and Tuch. Panarin, I think I don't know where that goes.
I think he's going to get more money than he should. But yeah, we'll see.
He could also decide he wants to go someplace for a chance at winning a cup, because that's not happening in New York. More strays throwing.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see. There were rumors that he was approached about taking a Kopitar-like deal, and he said no. So that could kind of point to him potentially being out of New York. Speaking of Kopitar, not that he would have ever left the Kings anyways, but he was on our sheet. He's going to retire. So most likely can kind of ignore his extension in there. Same can maybe be said for Malkin. Can ignore his. And the reason I'm kind of mentioning that is once you take those names out, we're going to be set up for a pretty thin UFA center market again.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm kind of looking at Charlie Coyle, Alex Wenberg as the top of the UFA center market.
Depending on how you view Nick Schmaltz.
Yeah, if you think he's a center, he would be at the top. I think he's a winger. He's been playing wing for most of his time.
I'm not gonna. But
yes, like it. If you need a center, you're a top 6 center. You're probably trading for one.
Yeah, unless you also, or if you think Patrick Laine is a center.
Is Patrick Laine an NHL player at this point?
That yeah. Anyways,
not to ignore it, Ovechkin may or may not need a new deal depending on what he decides to do if he retires.
Well, he will need a new deal if he continues playing in the NHL.
Right. Yeah, if he retires, he would not, obviously. Other wingers, UFA wingers, oh. Anders Lee could still be a pretty solid option. And yeah.
Oliver Bjorkstrand,
Michael Bunting, Jaden Schwartz. There's going to be some decent middle 6 guys out there, but there's not really. If all those top guys sign, there's not going to be a lot of elite depth.
Yeah, you have Natchez, Kempe, Tuch.
Yeah.
And if one of those guys hits the market, they will get well above our projection. If not, well, then yeah, someone else that we have projected lower is going to benefit from that. Yeah, real quickly, just again emphasizing the Kempe, Tuch, Natchez. I think Tuch's name's been out there the most partly because Buffalo's off to a rough start, and there's legitimate questions if he wants to stick around or not.
Yeah.
I also think that of those 3 that I just mentioned, he probably should be slotting in slightly behind the other 2.
Yeah.
And because of that, if I'm his agent, I'm not rushing to sign a contract because I want those other two to kind of set, hopefully, an 10, 11, maybe $12 million value for my client.
Yep.
And then I can slot in below that. So I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some panic, but I don't think that there needs to be quite full on panic in Buffalo yet over whether Tuch's resigning or not. It's January and we're seeing the Sabres still at the bottom of the standings and him still unsigned. We can revisit it then.
Yeah. Not quite any true elite defensemen on the UFA market. Rasmus Anderson, Mike Matheson are kind of the top guys.
Seems like John Carlson could be potentially out there.
Yeah, we'll see kind of what happens there. I think towards the beginning of the year, maybe it was beginning of training camp even, like preseason time, I think he was asked about it and he said there hasn't really been any talks, but he'd like to stay. We'll see.
I more point that out based on the depth Washington has at that position
Well,
and other
right,
moves they've made. They could be kind of saying thanks, we've appreciated your time, but
yeah. And honestly, I could see if Ovechkin decides to be done or he wants to go play in Russia, whatever, they could just hit the full, like, all right, let's transition kind of out of that era. Trouba, Ferraro, Ryan McDonough, we start to get to real, like, hopefully they can be good in a second pair role defenseman. Goalies, Markstrom is,
there's a lot of smoke around him getting an extension done.
yep. For what it's worth, we're at 2 by 5.6. With this projection,
right. Yeah.
I could easily kind of see that number.
Yeah.
Something similar to it.
Maybe I could see him tacking on another year or two and maybe going a touch even lower or even
maybe. I think New Jersey needs to be careful. He's older. He's 30. July 1st, he would be 36.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but the way New Jersey's kind of been operating,
yeah. They could do it. Let me see. Other goalies. Oh, this is starting to look like it might be similar to next year. Peter Mrazek, Connor Ingram, Cam Talbot, Nedeljkovic, if he looks good with San Jose, maybe. Wedgwood.
Picard.
Oh, I might have missed him. I was about to say Jonathan Quick, Eric Comrie. So, like, there might be a slight touch more depth than this past offseason, but again, likely will be a very thin goalie market.
I think that's where we wrap this episode. Appreciate you listening. Max Different Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Our content, including these contract projections, available on X, Blue Sky, Threads, at AFP Analytics. Can find our link tree there with our Buy Me a Coffee. We do appreciate if you are inclined to throw us a contribution for our work, support us. I think with that, we'll talk to you next time.